Let the record reflect that it's now 7:30 and we will reconvene the regular meeting. May I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Here.
Mr. Manginelli?
Here.
Mr. Nessie?
Here.
Mr. Siebert?
Here.
Ms. Buckley?
Here. Will the Director of Law please summarize the executive session discussion?
Yes, we had one item to discuss in executive session tonight, and that was contract negotiations. And a result of that discussion, there is a resolution that's going to be on the agenda tonight for action in the public session, which is 21-212, the MOA for the Superior Officers Association, which relates to the topic that was discussed in executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Starkey. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There is one set of meeting minutes for approval this evening. May I have a motion to approve the September 9th, 2021 regular meeting minutes?
Motion. Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Manginelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Now we'll move on to reports, and I will begin with Mr. Fallon.
Yeah, thank you, Council President, and good evening, everyone. I would like to report on the best practices inventory results. As in prior years, the borough is required to complete a best practices inventory that is promulgated by the State of New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. The inventory is meant to assess each municipality's compliance with various laws and evaluate implementation of fiscal and operational best practices. This year's inventory had a total of 48 questions distributed amongst 3 scoring categories. Core competencies had 19 questions, best practices 8 questions, and there was an unscored survey questions of 21. A municipality must receive a minimum score of 15 out of 23 available points on the inventory in order to receive its full final state aid payment. The borough's completion of the inventory resulted in a high score of 21.5 out of the 23 possible points. So, of course, we will be receiving our final state aid payment. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Appreciate that. Next, we have Mr. Neff, our Borough Engineer.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple things. First is I wanted to announce that the borough did receive a New Jersey Department of Transportation municipal aid grant for Gilbert Street. It's all 3 of the Gilbert Streets, north, south, and west, to repave those and install sidewalk on Gilbert Street North. So that would provide a connection from Greenbrier Falls to Shrewsbury Ave and the sidewalks that are already planned to be completed. So that grant was $311,800. It was actually the 4th highest out of 47 towns in the county that got a grant. So it's a nice grant for the borough. Also regarding some of the parks and recreation, over at Wardell Park, DPW has been working this week on the acoustic fence installation. That's kind of a heavy-duty vinyl type matting that was being installed on the chain link fence along the back of the pickleball courts and about halfway down the sides. Also the tennis courts, not just pickleball. So they have that tacked up for now, and they'll be back tomorrow just to finish attaching it with the stainless steel ties. So we think that that'll provide a good compromise between the pickleball players who love using the courts as well as the residents who had some concerns about the noise there. So it should definitely cut down on that noise. Over at Liberty Park, our contractor Short Top Construction have been working on the basketball courts, so those are all being upgraded over there. And at Sycamore Park, Precise Construction has been working on the restroom building. That is up. It's a modular building. You can go see that, but it is not going to be functional until the spring due to some of the delays with the pump station and utility equipment with everything going on in the world right now. They did pave the basketball court, and they're also doing the playground upgrades with the new safety surface and swing sets over there. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that acoustic sound, is that what it's called?
Acoustifence. It's Acoustablock, I
Is
think
in-
is the manufacturer.
Good to know. Next, we have Mayor Perillo. Do you have a report this evening?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to remind the people in the audience that Thursday, November 11th is Veterans Day, and I'm sure they're posted in the papers of where there may be some ceremony. So if you want to go to a ceremony, hopefully you can find it in the paper. At any rate, comes Memorial Veteran. Oh boy, I'm in good shape tonight. But just want to remind you, Veterans Day, all you have to do is just take a moment and remember the veterans who gave their lives for this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Perillo. Now we have Mr. Starkey, our Director of Law.
Yes, thank you, Council President. For my report, I would like to address the ordinance on for introduction tonight. It's known as the Cannabis Ordinance. I just want to give a brief summary of how we got to this point and what's in the ordinance. The state of New Jersey authorized municipalities to issue cannabis licenses. That was back in the early part of this year. And unfortunately, the state said the town has to adopt an ordinance to decline to issue licenses or take other action. If the borough takes no action, then the cannabis is automatically allowed. So here in Tinton Falls, we did what many towns around the state did, which was to adopt an ordinance declining to allow cannabis, but at the same time, the Borough Council appointed a cannabis subcommittee and did that because we thought, as I said, many other towns thought that it was better to do this in an orderly fashion rather than try to comply with the artificial deadline that was set by the state. The council asked the cannabis subcommittee to come back with a recommendation and take action before the end of this year, which is how we got here tonight. The cannabis subcommittee was led by Councilwoman Clay and Councilman Manginelli. There were a number of borough professionals, including myself and Mr. Neff, were on that committee. We had a number of very productive discussions about what to allow, how to allow it, with input from everyone. We got ordinances from other towns, looked at what other towns were doing, looked at the Cannabis Regulatory Commission to see what their direction was going in. And ultimately, we focused on, really, there's a lot in the ordinance, but there's three basic issues we focused on. The first issue was whether or not to allow cannabis licenses of any kind in Tinton Falls. The second issue was, if they were to be allowed, how many and what type of licenses would be allowed. And the third issue is, where would the licensed facilities be permitted to be located in town? After a lot of discussion, what is in this ordinance is what was recommended by the Cannabis Subcommittee. And in order of those issues, the first issue, the subcommittee is recommending that Tinton Falls permit licenses, cannabis licenses in the borough. There are 5. The state allows for 6 types of licenses. Tinton Falls will be allowing for 5 of those. Those licenses are for cultivation, the growing of cannabis, for the manufacture of cannabis and cannabis items, for the wholesaling of cannabis items, for distribution of cannabis licenses, and the 5th category of license will be for the retail sale of licenses. There is a 6th category, and this has been confusing to a lot of people around the state, but the 6th category is for delivery services of licenses. And that's somewhat, I always thought, confusing or misleading. The state allows cannabis to be delivered to homes throughout the state. Towns cannot restrict that, cannot regulate it. What the sixth form of license for delivery service is a brick and mortar facility where delivery services are run out of in a particular town. That is what Tinton Falls, or this ordinance, I should say, the proposed ordinance, will not allow. But the other 5 under the ordinance will be permitted, and there will be 2 licenses of each type, 2 cultivation, 2 manufacturing, 2 wholesaling, 2 distribution, and 2 retail licenses allowed. The licenses are technically issued by the state, but the state will look to the town to determine whether or how many can be issued. So the town has to sort of pre-authorize them before the state will formally issue them. And there's a whole process that any licensee will have to go through at the state, which is frankly still being developed at the state level. So I got through the first 2 issues. The third issue is where the licensees will be located in town. And I think I might ask Mr. Neff, our borough engineer, to cover this, because this was also the topic of a lot of discussion. But Tom, if you could take over with that about the locations.
Yeah, as Mr. Starkey indicated, this was a big topic for the subcommittee. You know, where were these different licenses going to go? So ultimately, it was decided that they would be located in 3 different zoning districts of the borough. And those are the IOP, which is the Industrial Office Park Zone, the MFG zone for manufacturing, and the MFG2 manufacturing zone. So those are the 3 zones. And the zoning districts are spread out in different areas. So these uses would be permitted in those zones in locations south of Pine Brook Road. That's where the manufacturing zones are located. That's where the majority of the IOP zones are located. There are 2 other smaller IOP zones north of Pine Brook, but they're much closer to the residential areas, really surrounded by some of the residential properties, whereas the areas to the south, those more industrial zones are grouped together. There's also more available land, whether it's land that's still undeveloped or warehouse type space that has come before the planning board recently and is either under construction right now or we anticipate going to construction within the next year. So a lot of those warehouse flex space type facilities could be potential locations for these various cannabis uses. So those are the different areas where they'd be permitted.
There are a number of other details in the ordinance that are designed really to make sure the residents of Tinton Falls have adequate things like adequate security. For example, a security guard is required at each licensed facility. Each facility is going to be required to have a safe to keep any cash, because most of these are cash businesses, to maintain that. There's also, we've tried to impose some odor control, but I would say on that front, there is the Cannabis Regulatory Commission recognizes that odor, for example, is a statewide concern, and they're going to be developing standards, I believe, they're going to be on a statewide basis. But we try to do that in the interim, knowing that that's an issue that had to be addressed. So I can report to the council that the members of the subcommittee have all agreed and unanimously recommend this ordinance to the governing body for its consideration. So it's on for first reading tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Starkey. Just for edification and my own clarification.
Sure.
The class that is not recommended, that delivery depot, what I call, right, the brick and mortar, that's the one class I believe that does not have compensation or taxation for the municipality, correct? The recs have 2% or 1%.
That is also correct, yes.
Yeah, if you could just mention about the taxation
That's an
piece.
important point, yes. Each facility, each licensee will be taxed by the state and will be taxed on the local level. And by that I mean the municipality will receive taxes from the sale of the cannabis, from the manufacturing, from the distribution, that will be calculated from our end at the maximum that's allowed by state law for a municipality.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, Mrs. Clay? Yeah, did you have a comment?
No, I'm waiting
Okay.
for my report.
All right. Mrs. Hustler, your report?
Oh, no, I have no report tonight, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to council reports. Mrs. Clay?
Thank you, Council President. There's a couple of comments I'd like to make about the subcommittee work. The first comment that I think is important to make is that originally, when we opted out, we had promised that we would come back to the town by November 15th, and we're actually delivering an ordinance on the 9th. So I think that is noteworthy, and with that being said, we seriously had hours and hours of discussion and review with a plethora of professionals within the town that were on the committee. And the other point that I'd just like to make is that this was a committee project, and with all committees or group work, there's always like give and take, and sometimes people are pretty strong in their convictions, but we worked very hard to reach what we thought was a reasonable consensus as a starting point for us in Tinton Falls. So I'd like to really thank, once again, Kevin, Councilman Manginelli, Tom, Mr. Costa, Jen Beam, and also Sharon Brown from our planning board for all of their hard work, and my fellow council members for their input.
Thank you, Mrs. Clay.
Council President.
And now we have Mr. Manginelli for your report.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yes, we did do a lot of work. I attended a Historic Preservation Committee meeting last night. So the first holiday event will be on December 5th, and it'll take place at the Crawford House, and it's Santa Comes, and it's going to be a drive-through. So you can take your kids there and have a good time. They're going to have music. December 5th from 1 to 3. That's that. The other thing I'd like to recognize again, Veterans Day, and we have in our midst a World War II veteran. He is our mayor. And what you should know is he participated in the last battle in the Pacific, Okinawa. And Mayor, I thank you for your service. Thank you, Council President. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Manginelli. Mr. Nessie for your report.
Thank you, Council President, and good evening, everybody. I'll start with Planning Board. The Planning Board approved 2 preliminary and final major site plans at its last meeting. One application was for a gas station and retail space, and the second application was for a flex space for up to 20 tenants. It's Planning Board. I can find my notes. Recreation update. Recreation wants to thank everyone who participated in the trunk or treat, both the registered participants and all the trunks that were decorated. Special thanks to the Police Department, Department of Public Works, and Tinton Falls Fire Company 1 for their participation. We had close to 250 Tinton Falls children registered for the event and 25 trunks. This is the first year Tinton Falls is offering a wrestling program in conjunction with the Monmouth Regional High School. Registration is currently underway and is open to boys and girls in kindergarten through grade 5. The rec department is currently preparing for the 2021-2022 basketball program for boys and girls, kindergarten through grade 8. Registration will be Saturday, November 13th. We will have a limited number of teams, so register promptly due to limited gym space. Kids art and Snapology will continue through the winter months as we move these programs indoors in the community room. Watch registration details on our Facebook and website. And finally, tentatively preparing for the menorah lighting and tree lighting event for Sunday, November 28th, as we seek confirmation from Santa, singers, tree decorators, and Rabbi Gabbai Glissold from the Monmouth Reformed Temple. Additional information will be posted on the Recreation page, Facebook page. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Nessie. Councilman Siebert?
The library will be submitting its budget request to the administration next week. I just wanted to, in regards to the cannabis ordinance, it was taken in consideration greatly, the proximity to residential areas. I think that was one thing that really shines through here, and I appreciate everyone's work on that. And also, Mr. Gately, thank you for your service. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Siebert. And finally, for my report, I would also like to thank the Cannabis Subcommittee, as well as all the residents that provided feedback during all of the workshop sessions and various emails we all received over the past number of months. I think this is a great starting point. I also want to mention that, the number of licenses, the way the state law works is whatever you opt into, you have for 5 years. You can add to it, but you can't take away. So I think all the discussion and all of your hard work over the past number of months is reflected in this ordinance, and I think it's a really good starting point. So I just want to acknowledge and appreciate everyone's hard work on that. Next, I also wanted to thank, we had Election Day was last week. I want to thank, we've got a whole bunch of candidates in the room tonight. So I just want to thank all of you who ran. I look forward to continuing with or starting to work with those who won the election, but I want to thank all of the candidates who ran. Having run 2 years ago for the first time, it's a lot of time and energy, and you should all be commended for stepping up to the plate. And I hope regardless of the outcome, you continue your community service, because we all appreciate it. So thank you. Next, I'd also like to thank Sherry and the Rec Department and DPW and the fire companies for the trunk and treat. I was there in my full Tigger regalia. There are photos, embarrassing ones on Facebook. And it was a great time. It was awesome to see everybody all dressed up in all of the trunks. And for the Environmental Commission, to which I'm the liaison for, our next meeting, our November meeting, so as not to have a meeting on Thanksgiving Day, is the first week in December, and a special topic will be Sustainable Jersey. So if anyone is interested in that meeting will be on Thursday in the first week of December at the Crawford House. It's a hybrid meeting though, so if you can make it in person, we also have, it will be on the WebEx as well. And Veterans Day, just want to thank all of the veterans who may be in the room and the mayor for their service. So, and I think that's it for my report this evening. Moving on to ordinances for introduction. There is one ordinance on for introduction this evening. I'd like to remind the public that when ordinance is introduced, there's no public discussion. The public discussion for the following ordinance will take place when it's up for final consideration. With that, may I ask the clerk to read the title of the first ordinance?
Ordinance 2020-1480, an ordinance amending Chapter 40, Section 4 of the Borough Code entitled Definitions and creating 2 new sections of the Borough Code. Chapter 40, Section 37B, 22, entitled Cannabis Facilities, and Chapter 5-9, entitled Cannabis Licensing and Taxation, to authorize the issuance of certain cannabis licenses within the Borough of Tinton Falls.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the introduction of this ordinance?
Motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Abstain.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Thank you. There are no ordinances for final consideration this evening, which brings us to the public discussion. May I have a motion to open the public discussion?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
This is the time the public may comment on any topic of their choice. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do you want to start with the written comment?
Sure.
We have one, I think, one written comment
Yes,
submitted
there's
prior to the
one
meeting.
written comment received that the person asked that it be read into the record for tonight. This is from Teresa Conway Stockett, 49 Charles Drive, Tinton Falls. After reading the new ordinance addressing cannabis facilities and their licensing within town, I have several concerns. First is the restriction of location, Section 2B, to only appropriately zoned areas south of Pine Brook Road. What is the reason for this? If cannabis-related businesses are beneficial for the town, then they should be beneficial anywhere there is appropriate zoning. As written, it seems more like a not-in-my-backyard philosophy. Second, the odor control section 5-9.4, item E, seems insufficient, especially if we're allowing growing and manufacturing. I am concerned that directing odor complaints to the New Jersey DEP will result in a similar situation to the dump, where complaints are only investigated during business hours and/or do not receive appropriate attention because they are a quality of life concern versus a health hazard. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Hustler. Mr. Starkey, did you want to make any comments in response to that? I think you addressed the rationale for the Pine Brook Road. For the odor control, I know that's something that we've all been, concerned about. I will just say, I know we're all in this meeting now, but the CRC is meeting right now, this evening, and from what I read in the League of Municipalities summary, part of what they're going to be discussing is some of the rules. So I'm looking forward to, they're all recorded and publicly posted if anyone wants to watch them. Warning, they were 4 hours last time I watched one, so I'm hoping that they address that, but I know that is something they're going to address at the state level, right?
I really think that odor control is an issue that is common to every town in the state of New Jersey who's going to address this. So it really cries out for some state guidance, state regulations on it, and I expect that to come. What we've done is, I know there's actually several towns that don't address odor control at all in their ordinances. We've tried to take a step where we can give some guidelines and hopefully some, advanced notice to applicants of what's going to be required of them. But I acknowledge it's an issue that I think is going to have some more discussion on the state level for it to get really nailed down.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now I'll open it up to people in the room. If you have a comment, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Yes, Ms. Catalano.
I have two items, and it's nice seeing everybody. I know I haven't been here for a while. Denise Catalano, 11 Alpine Trail. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions about the cannabis thing, but you mentioned south of Pine Brook. Since I live in south of Pine Brook, are there maps available where we can see where those zones are, that I can go online and see them?
Are they, yeah, I know they were in the process of being updated. Are they completed?
It was in the packet. Okay. All right, I will look at it prior to the next meeting.
That was revised?
the old packet.
The original one that was, I don't think the original one that was posted on Fridays.
That was the
So
original one.
accurate.
There's a revised one. That's not the most current.
There's also, I'm sure the general zoning map is on the website also. It's there.
Yeah, but it's so tiny you can't see anything.
Okay, we'll talk to the borough planner and get the updated
Yeah.
one on there as well.
But that was in the packet, like, for tonight's meeting? Is that-
I don't think it was up, I think.
It
I
was
don't-
originally in the packet.
Okay. Maybe somebody can find it out.
Yeah, if you want to, and if you want to just email any one of us, whatever, when the updated one is there, we can just
It's
email it to you
also,
as well.
it's on the borough website under zoning.
Is it on the web?
It's on the
okay.
borough website under zoning. And if
Okay,
you have
I
a
will look
laptop,
there.
you can zoom in on it.
Okay, just one comment about that, the cannabis thing. I know it's not open discussion right now, but that's a very sensitive subject to a lot of people, and like I said, especially people who live south of Pine Brook, which is a lot. I would suggest that before we actually allow that to come through, that the town do a referendum on the next election. And the reason for the referendum is, I know in a prior state election, people voted as to whether we thought that cannabis should be allowed in the state. So people were voting, yes, I think it should be, or no, don't want it. But now we're down to our area, and I think people in Tinton Falls should have input that says, hey, it's okay if they do it in other state, in other parts of the state, but we really don't want it in Tinton Falls because of what our beliefs are, the problems it causes. And trust me, I know a producer out in California, and trust me, there are lots, more than you probably even realize. So that's just my comment. It's something to consider. You don't need to reply. Don't need to. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the Wardell Park. First off, as I've said to you guys and gals many times before, when you were building it and after the opening, it's a phenomenal park. And I have to tell you, I haven't played in a lot of the pickleball locations, but I have been in at least 3, and there's people over there that could talk about others. I have not seen a facility anyplace else in Monmouth County that even comes close to what you guys built at the Wardell Park. So thank you to everybody. Thank you for the engineer for taking my comments way back when. Thank you for just putting up with us. And the lady who's controlling it, you know, I think, well, I know, but we got around to the team reach, so she got to see the comments. But I would like to bring up just a couple of things, and I do have a letter and signatures, electronically done signatures from pickleballers. I only had one copy. My copier was going crazy. You want it? I give it to you now.
Sure, you can just leave it there. Thanks.
And I'll kind of recap what it is. I think they also, we also mentioned about how great we think it is, and we thank the town for having it. I know there have been some concerns recently about the sound, and, well, you guys move fast, and I know you probably had a big part of that. Getting those sound nettings, whatever you want to call them. I'm not going to call them boards. So I think that's good. One of the things that I think that had come up at the prior meeting, which I could not make, was the chance of possibly taking it from an open play position to a court reservation. And I will tell you that on this petition of 113 people that are playing pickleball at Wardell, nobody wants reservations. As a beginner pickleball, those 3 ladies over there, I met them personally while playing pickleball. And when I had problems with an injury, they even volunteered to help me out if I ever need anything. So the point is, the open play has built friendships and camaraderie that I haven't seen in my tennis or other sports that I've done. So part of that is the open play. So we would like that to continue. I don't know if you want to ask any questions about it or comments.
No.
No.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay. The other thing is, right now you have the hours from 8:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night, and you have lights up there. I think most people are okay with the 8:30 in the morning, but people who work who don't possibly get to a court till 6:30 at night, it's quite limiting. And with the sound barriers that you now put up there, that should help alleviate any, quote, nighttime type of issues. And we really would like to have you go back to the original plan of 8:30. I know it sounds like only an hour, but to those people who maybe even work to 6 o'clock, and Tracy, you work for J&J, and I'm sure you don't get out quite early. So that's one of the things we would like for you guys to consider. So keep it as open play. It works out great. We'd never have 113 people who would be able to play if you didn't have open play. If you had only reservations, you'd probably get a lot less than that at any given time. Anything else? Any questions for me?
Nope.
You know I always talk.
Appreciate your comments. Did you have anything you wanted to say at this time?
No, thank you for your comments, and we'll certainly take them into consideration. I appreciate it.
And you folks know how to reach me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else from the public have a comment this evening?
Hello, Mitch Colbert, 21 Cedar Place. Yeah, I just want to actually, like you've already said, commend the council for a great job on the cannabis ordinance. I still use the wrong word all the time. It looks really well thought out, and I know you guys worked real hard on it, so thank you very much for getting that done before the end of the year. I think you've explained it a couple of times. I'm still not getting the difference between the Class 6 delivery brick and mortar thing and the other delivery thing. Where's those other people gonna get this stuff if it's not from a brick and mortar store?
No, it's not a retail store. It's like think about a taxi depot, right, where the taxis all go, and they go out from there. That's not gonna be allowed. There's not gonna be a facility which sort of sends out delivery drivers, from their location. That will have to be in other towns, or I don't know how, it might be like Uber, where they just,
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure, not that, I have no problem going to a store to get my own stuff, yeah, I don't know if there's like a grub hub for cannabis or not. So that kind of thing would be allowed, you're just saying like a depot.
Yeah.
Right.
I get it now.
Yeah, the delivery service can't be prohibited because it emanated, I believe, from medical, because you have people that can't drive or disabled, so they have to be, anything they get has to be delivered.
Okay.
So,
All right, cool. All right, thanks. Just also Veterans Day, thank you, Mayor Perillo, for your service, and congratulations on your victory this last election, and all the other people who participated and won. So well done, everybody. Coming back to cannabis, by the way, the woman who's just here talked about the voters, just 2/3 of the voters of Tinton Falls voted for cannabis legalization last year, so it is still something I think, that the town, even as, just as a town, we want. And the last thing I have, and I think we've talked about this once before, I still don't get the can't comment that, when you introduce something, it feels like if you're taking the final vote that night, it feels like opening the public comments up for that night. It feels wasted, right? I mean, unless you have some insanely powerful comment, you probably already have your minds made up on how you're gonna vote. And I don't know if that's a state law or if that's just the way we do things, but it seems weird.
Mr. Starkey, do you want to elaborate?
It's a state law. The state tells towns how to adopt ordinances, and it says, first reading, no public comment. The second reading is when you have it's called the public hearing on the ordinance. Now, what often happens is, what's happening here tonight, is that people get up during the public comment period and say, well, I want to be heard early on this. But the idea is an ordinance, to have it put out for the public to see, to understand, and then to, study, so that when it comes time for a hearing, they're ready to make comments on it.
Conceivably, not that I want to slow down government anymore, couldn't you have a hearing and then vote on it the following meeting?
No,
No, it's introduce, hearing, final vote?
Oh, yeah, good idea. I'd go to the state legislature, tell them that's the way it should be
sorry,
done.
so even final.
It's a different way of doing it, right? You could have the public hearing in the first reading,
All right, I wasn't sure if the law just stipulated you couldn't have the comment on the first thing. All right, anyway.
But there is also a mechanism, because it's introduced and people see it, they can email us, comment,
Okay.
speak to,
Right.
like, which they
It's
do,
designed
so.
to get a lot of, transparency and input from the public. It's just the formal public hearing is at the second reading.
No problem. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Coolberg. Does any other member of the public have a comment?
Craig Gately, 10 Polo Club Drive.
Hi, Mr.
I just
Gately.
want to talk about the cannabis ordinance. I'm really happy that you guys got it done, the commission, I applaud you for that. You said you would have it done by now, and you did get it done. I'm really happy to see that. 90% of it I think it's great, I think it should pass, but I do have some comments and questions. Was there a specific reason why the quantity of 2 for each class, how is that determined? And can that change over time if we have 2 retailers or 2 wholesalers or 2 cultivators? Can we increase that amount then?
Yeah, so it can definitely increase over time. So say we say 2 now, and we get a slew of licenses and whatever, for whatever reason, any future governing body wants to increase the number of licenses, we can do that.
Okay.
What we can't do is decrease it.
Okay. And does that includes micro business as well? It doesn't make a difference, micro business, or if it's a full-size unit? Because I saw in there about the micro business, like limitations on the square footage and the plants and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is that?
I think that was
all
one of the
same?
questions we had for the CRC, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for right now, as far as the ordinance is concerned, the micro businesses would fall under the same category same licenses. It
Okay.
would be no difference.
Okay.
That's one of the items I'm waiting to see if they
Right.
make any more specific regulations on from the CRC.
Okay, the fees, $10,000 licensing fee to the town, and then there was, I can't remember, it was and then $2,500 annually. Where does that number, where do those numbers come from?
That is, those figures are set in the discretion of the municipality. The legislation said it has to be a reasonable fee. What we did was take sort of a survey of what other towns in the state who had adopted ordinances, what they were going, so that we could be consistent and competitive with them. So, and that's right about the range most towns are coming in at.
Okay, is there any consideration for the micro business aspect to it, that could be exorbitant possibly for them? I'm just trying to look out for the little guy that wants to.
That's a possibility. If we get further direction from the state, we can consider down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
The security guards in every single location, every class of business, is that, it just seems overkill to me. I'm just curious why that was settled on, where you have to have security, like a liquor store doesn't have a private security guard there, and I don't know why that is.
We thought that this is kind of out of an abundance of caution, because some of this we're just, not sure, so we didn't want to have less security than we thought might be needed. And would be hard to say later, oh, we were going to require you to have more security now. So we started with that. We've had some comments that may be not necessary, but for the time being, that's where it's going to stand. We can adjust that later if
Okay.
it seems to be too much.
Why weren't HCC zones included as an option, as a fourth zoning district?
Tell me what to-
Right now, most of those uses, wholesaling, warehousing, distribution, they're not permitted in the HCC zone anyway. So that's why we felt with manufacturing, the IOP zone, those uses are already permitted in those zones. It's just a matter of switching from manufacturing something else to cannabis. So they kind of felt more naturally fitting into those.
And that's a
uses.
restriction by the state or by?
That's local.
That's a
Yeah.
local
Yes.
restriction.
Yeah, so it's another one of those things, if down the road we decided to increase the space, we could do so, but we couldn't decrease, so.
Okay. All right, and my biggest issue is what's been brought up by others tonight is just the limitation of Pine Brook Road and south of Pine Brook Road. To me, that reeks of elitism and NIMBY, not in my backyard. I look in front of me, I have 5 council members that all live north of Pine Brook Road. All 4 out of the 5 members of the commission that live in Tinton Falls live north of Pine Brook Road. So all these people making the decision live north of Pine Brook Road. To me, it doesn't sit well with me. And our biggest commercial piece of real estate that sits empty today is in Tinton Falls Plaza, the old Acme. That's, I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's by far the largest piece of commercial real estate that sits empty right now, that's just sitting there. I don't know why we're saying we can't have a cannabis business in that piece of real estate. That makes no sense at all to me. Plus, you have the old Fort Monmouth, whatever's left of their possibilities for the business. And then I figure all along Shrewsbury Avenue would be a great option possibly for some of these businesses. So I really think, I want you to pass this. If it can't be changed for the final ordinance, that's fine, but I really think that soon that should be changed and north of Pine Brook Road should be included as well. And I'm someone that lives in north of Pine Brook Road. And I'm not even going to go to these places, but I think that they should be allowed north of Pine Brook Road. That's all I really had to say. Thank you.
The only comments I'll make to that is, and I wasn't part of the cannabis subcommittee, this has nothing to do with anywhere the council members live. I will say that it has to do with the zones in the district.
Well, that's because you're not allowing.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Gately.
Ms.
Does anyone
Buckley?
else have a comment this evening?
Ms. Buckley?
Yes, Mr.
Those
Sieber?
HCCs could be considered in the future, though.
Yes, of course,
Correct.
anything, this is their baseline minimum. So again, I'll restate, and this is super important, is that this is the minimum. You can increase, you can add to the way the state law works, you cannot take away.
Thank you.
So this is just my personal opinion. You're going to a situation where, this hasn't been done in towns before, so let's learn and grow from there, right? We don't want to go in with everything and then be, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Well,
Too
too
late.
bad, right?
Too late,
So,
too
but
bad.
we can always change it to increase it. So this is one of those things where, no recreational licenses have been issued yet. The earliest it'll be next year. Let's learn and see what happens, right? That's to me the smartest and conservative approach, and then go from there.
And the areas that were in the ordinance are significantly far away from residential areas.
Right, yeah, I mean, from my understanding from the subcommittee is that that was the prime consideration, is you don't want an area that's right behind someone's home. God forbid, you know, I don't want to, you know, but like, God forbid there is an issue, right? You don't want it to be a business that's right next to someone's home. So to me, I mean, I think, like I said before earlier, I congratulate the subcommittee. I know you all did a lot of work and you've discussed all through these issues. And I think you've come up with a smart approach to start us off in this new industry in the state. So I appreciate that.
I think everybody sitting up here is very comfortable with moving forward 5 years with this plan.
Okay. Next
Hi.
comment, Ms. Goldberg.
Ellen Goldberg, 90 Glenwood Drive. First of all, I would like to congratulate Mayor Perillo on his reelection, Mr. Manginelli on his reelection, Mr. Dobrin on his election, and Mr. Siebert for running a great campaign. I want to thank the Borough of Tinton Falls for the experience of running for public office. I was very proud of our efforts and running a clean campaign that I want to also thank Mayor Perillo and Mr. Siebert for doing as well, that promoted positively what my running mate, Mitch Kohlberg, and myself were trying to accomplish. Having this opportunity to knock on thousands of doors and being able to speak to so many people was truly enlightening. I thank the over 2,200 voters who had put their trust and faith in me to be the next mayor of Tinton Falls. Although there were more residents who voted to re-elect Mayor Perillo, I am not going away. There are many issues that were brought up during the campaign, and I would like to address these issues even though I am not publicly in office. I told the mayor that I would like to meet with him and to discuss these things, and I look forward to meeting with him as soon as possible. Sorry. I want to have it on record that I am aware that we need to hire a new clerk since Ms. Hessler is retiring, although I'm going to be sad to see her go. We also must hire a borough administrator as soon as possible. I also want it on record that I feel, as well as many of the residents that I spoke to in the past few months, that we need a community center, and that community center will house the new library. I feel there are many ways for us to fundraise so that this is not a burden on our taxpayers, but we do need a lot of support from the people and the residents in town in order to do this. I have been making a list of many different ways that we can fundraise to get this accomplished, but I think that this town deserves a library and could really use a community center that encompasses both. Speaking of fundraising, the library is planning our third children's fashion show in late March or early April. I have agreed to take it over and be the chairperson once again. We hope to have the council, the mayor, the borough employees, and the residents' support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Goldberg.
Thank you, Ellen, very much.
Does any other member of the public have a comment this evening? Okay. Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public discussion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Miscellaneous business. Does any member of council have anything to add that they didn't get to during reports? Okay. Seeing none, before we move on to the consent agenda, are there any items any member of council would like to be removed to be voted on separately? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second?
Okay, thank you. I have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Thank you. There is no further executive session this evening or workshop, so this concludes today's business. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is now adjourned at 8:20 p.m. Thanks, everybody, and have a good evening.
Tired tonight.